Most doctors spend their entire careers improving lives of their patients. But when it comes to giving back financially, many feel unsure where their money actually goes and how to do it responsibly.
I just strongly encourage people to do your due diligence about your charities that you want to give them. So first of all, decide what resonates with you, what's important to you, and then go and research the organisations that are out there. Ask the tough questions, get them to explain what the different job descriptions are and what their purpose is.
In this episode, we're joined by Cassandra Treadwell, founder and CEO of So They Can, an international education-focused charity operating in Kenya and Tanzania, with full DFAT accreditation and a powerful model for sustainable and measured change. This episode isn't just about feel-good charity stories. It's about showing you how to approach giving with the same rigor as you apply to your investments.
Girls, particularly in our Baringo community in Kenya, are seen as commercial property. Understandably, in some ways, when you've got 7 children and they're all starving and they've got an opportunity to sell one of the girls off to a 60-year-old man when she's 12 years old, for a few goats, they take that to feed their kids for a while. So people just don't realise that for a cup of coffee, you can pretty much stop a girl getting sold and put her in boarding school for the year and totally change the future of her and all her future generations through giving her an education.
Here's what we'll cover: the real difference between a charity, a not-for-profit, and an NGO, and how to tell which ones are credible, how DFAT and ACNC accreditation work, and what you should look for before donating to any cause. What happens when philanthropy is treated like an investment, including project-level accountability, donor reporting, and tax-effective giving. If you've ever thought about giving back, either locally or globally, this episode will give you the clarity and framework to do so with purpose, impact, and confidence. Now, let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome back to another installment of the Investing for Doctors podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bi. We have Cassandra Treadwell with us today. So Cass, is that how you
Yes,
like
Cass
to address
is
you?
great,
Yeah.
thanks.
So Cass is the CEO and founder of So They Can, an international charity that was originated in Australia. And I believe you're a Kiwi yourself?
I am, yeah, I am.
All right. And so let's start off by giving us a bit of an introduction about yourself, because in today's episode, we're talking about something different, not so much in how we can make money, but how we can give back in a way. And so welcome to our show.
Thanks very much, B. It's very nice to be here. So my background, I'm from New Zealand, yes, Kiwi, and I did my law degree in Christchurch in New Zealand. And then the day of my last exam, I took off and travelled around the world, as all of us Kiwis do. And I ended up backpacking through Africa for about 9 months and totally fell in love with the continent and the people and the animals and the space.
Yep.
My parents are both doctors though. They were both specialists. And so when I kind of rang them saying, I'm going to stay here and save the world in Africa.
Save the world.
Totally. Mum and Dad, sort of said, I think, maybe if you came back and used your law degree, you could do more to help than actually giving everything up and living there. So I listened to them and I came back and I practiced law in commercial law firms in New Zealand for about 10 years. Prior to that, actually, I went to London and I did my master's in medical law and ethics at King's College University over there. I loved it. Half of us were doctors, or half of the class were doctors, and then the other half of us were lawyers.
Yep.
So we had some really interesting discussions and debates around new birth technologies, euthanasia, end of life, all that kind of stuff. It was great. I loved that year. So then I practiced in commercial law firms and also then moved into in-house legal counsel for hospitals in New Zealand. So I was legal counsel for a number of our hospitals in New Zealand for about 3 or 4 years. And that's when I was working within hospitals with patients and end-of-life decision-making and, babies in the newborn arena and the ethics and supporting the doctors and clinicians around that space.
Yeah.
Loved it. And then moved to Australia and discovered I thought I could just continue my in-house legal work in Australia, but here in Sydney anyway, when I came here, they were outsourcing their medico legal work to lawyers, big law firms. They didn't have in-house legal counsel like
As in the hospitals?
Yeah. So unlike in New Zealand where we would have an in-house lawyer, they were outsourcing. So, and I didn't want to go back to the big commercial law firms, which is who they contracted with to get their legal advice.
Yeah. So we previously had a lawyer, a couple of lawyers on the show, and it's the firm law environment is very different from the in-house.
It's very different.
Sort of way things are done. So, So I completely understand that. Didn't want to.
It was a really good training ground for me as a young lawyer to start off in those big commercial law firms. But I think my heart's in connecting with people directly and helping people. And that's what I loved about medical law. And that's what I loved about my time as an in-house legal counsel in hospitals, because I would see patients. I'd be with patients. I'd be with clinicians. I'd be with doctors. I'd be, facilitating the conversations about withdrawal of treatment, and love that. You don't get that in the big commercial law firms. It tends to be more obviously commercially driven.
Yes.
Around profit. So, so when I came to Australia and discovered that then you didn't do that, you work with the commercial law firms, I thought, well, I have to rethink. And that's when I started remembering my passion for Africa.
And how many years was this post that African trip?
Yeah. Oh, wow. So I went to Africa when I was like 24 for the first time.
Yeah.
And then this would have been around 10 years later, 35.
Yeah. So
I was back in Sydney going, what am I going to do now with my medico-legal sort of career? And so it was sparked off because I was up with my then fourth baby in the middle of the night feeding him, and I turned the TV on and that movie Hotel Rwanda was on. You ever seen that?
Yes.
So it's a very real depiction of the Rwandan genocide that saw over 1 million people killed in the space of 1 month, the most people actually ever killed in that time in world history. And I just remember watching it going, just sort of the guilt around where I was living and the home I had, and feeling like I wanted to do something to alleviate that feeling of guilt, I suppose. So then I had an idea of, it was a dinner party for all my friends around the world. I said, let's hold a dinner party on the same night and invite people and ask them for a donation. And we ended up raising about $30,000 from that. We called it Eat So They Can. And I took that money to Africa, looking for something to get involved in. And that's when I came across the IDP camps, or internally displaced persons camps, they're called, which was interestingly very analogous to the Rwandan genocide. So in 2007 in Kenya, the national elections were held, and one tribe looked to massacre another tribe about 2 weeks out of elections, and about 600,000 were displaced from the west of Kenya to the east of Kenya and landed in these showgrounds. The United Nations gave them all tents, and then eventually the Kenyan government gave them the equivalent of $100 per family, and they picked up their tents and pooled their money and bought pockets of land in the safer area. So when I turned up, these IDP camps, or refugee camps but citizens in their own country, I went and visited a number of those, and they were all pretty horrendous. No running water, no sanitation, no sort of semblance of order. But one in particular had all that to a lesser degree, but when I asked them what I could do to help, rather than like all the others had said, the other IDP camps, which was just food money, they asked me to meet with their committee, and they had a committee in this IDP camp of 6,000 people, of 51 individuals who represented the different tribes in Kenya. And they sat with me and they had a proposal. They said, we are waiting for someone to help us build a school. Can you help us educate our children? Because they had fled with nothing, and they realised that all the government schools around there were very overcrowded and under-resourced. And they had all these school-aged children in this camp of 6,000 running around losing their education. So they had sussed out that just 2 kilometres from their IDP camp was a 5-acre block of land that the teachers' union had designated to be a government school. And so they said, will you help us convince the government that you'll partner with us and build a school for our children? So that's kind of where it all started.
Right. And so it started from a dinner party, $30,000, and a chance meeting with a group of, I guess, elders from the various tribes.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this IDP refugee camp,
Yeah.
And they asked me to help educate their kids, and I loved the sort of deep impact of that concept. Obviously, being lucky enough to have received a great education myself, and my parents having been doctors, and we all very strongly believe in the power of education to break the poverty cycle. So it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, So it started off as eat so they can. When did you drop the eat?
I think when I realized I had to do other things than just dinner parties to raise the $5 million a year we need to do everything we're doing. So yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And I sometimes struggle with that, actually, the name. I sometimes tell my team I'd like to change it to So We Can, because I've just learned so much about the partnerships and working with the communities, and they help us as much as we help them.
Yeah, that's very interesting because before we started recording this, I was just like, oh yeah, so it's Cass from So We Can, because I instinctively said that because I've been to one of these dinners and so it's very sort of internalized almost.
Oh, that's interesting.
The story and obviously you corrected me. I was just like, oh, I thought it was we.
I know, it should be.
Yeah.
But when I talk to the communities on the ground, they struggle with it. And we're so, unfortunately, in some ways, well, fortunately, unfortunately, we're very well known in our communities now. And to suddenly throw, when it's their third or fourth language, some of them, or the tribal language, change it to So We Can. I don't know. But I'd like to for personal reasons, because I think for us back here, it would demonstrate the genuine partnership as opposed to I struggle with the traditional definition of charity being that one-way street sort of great white saviour thing. It's just totally incorrect. They teach us so much about what it means to be human, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that you've mentioned the term charity, right? I think a lot of our listeners, many of us do donate to charities, and it's really, what is actually a definition of a charity? Because there's lots of terms thrown around, some Australian, some international. There's these terms like, NGO, which is a non-government organization. There's these NFP, which is not-for-profit. And then there's obviously a charity. And I guess in every jurisdiction, there's a different classification of what it actually is. Yeah. So perhaps, start off with, what is a charity?
That's a good question.
What is the defining characteristics of a charity?
Yeah.
And structurally, what does that look like? Yeah. Because, you've been running this entity. It's an entity, obviously. So what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So a charity has to have a charitable purpose. So your purpose for existing is to, in our case, empower partners on the ground. There used to be the term beneficiaries, but I don't really like that term. So there has to be a charitable purpose. That is your mission for existing. And as we were discussing earlier, there is the not-for-profit terminology, which is just generally an entity that exists not to make profit, but for some other purpose. But it doesn't necessarily have to be charitable. It doesn't necessarily have to include beneficiaries where the profit is going to. So broadly speaking, a charitable purpose would be something that is can be seen as a good. And education is one of them. Providing perhaps healthcare could be one of them. Or environmental. And then it somehow gets animal exactly. So think of the big ones that we have in Australia is the Red Cross, that sort of thing. Homelessness. The homelessness ones. There's cancer care. But then some of them at the same time are NFPs because they don't have that charitable component, and they're like sort of almost organizations for a particular group of people. Such as our our medical association is not a charity. It's a not-for-profit, and it still has that a support structure for a group of professionals or an organization or a group of people with a similar interest or goal, but not necessarily charitable beneficiary, what you'd call beneficiaries. Provide a benefit to people in need. So I think I think vulnerable that's people often as well. I think is the need for a charity. And we looked this up before. I mean, the NGO term is actually a very American term. It is. And even though NGO stands for non-government organization, I mean, that could be anything. Like, a shipping company could be a non-government organization. They could still be making a profit. But I think in that sort of aspect, the NGO
terminology when used in the American sense, it's also like a not-for-profit kind of.
It has a real charitable connotation to it, interestingly.
Exactly. Whereas it's not really used in Australia.
No, and I don't think America uses NFP, not-for-profit either. It's much more NGO.
NGO, yeah.
It's very Americanized.
So it almost attaches that not-for-profit with the NGO and perhaps charity component.
But anyway. I'm really glad you asked me the question, because it made me think,
It's one of those things that you've been doing something for so long, then you're just like, oh, wait a minute, back to basics.
Yeah. So, and obviously we have DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade accreditation. So we have been audited and approved as one of, there's only 1% of charities in Australia with full DFAT accreditation. And so they do a fairly brutal and rigorous audit and assessment.
Tell us, what does that mean? I mean, DFAT is the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Yeah. It basically means we've been given the nod to spend the Australian government's development money.
Right.
There's about 47 full DFAT accredited organisations. So it's the big ones, the Red Cross and the World Visions and all of those guys. We about 4 years ago now, we went through that whole process. Felt like submitting 3 PhDs, to be honest. Really helpful though. And then they came in for a 3-day in-house audit, which was pretty brutal. But we got the tick, which was great. It basically just, from a DFAT Australian government perspective, it means that they are happy to use us as one of their partners to implement their international development work.
Oh, right.
But for our donors and our general people out there, it means that they've just got, that they can feel very assured that because we've been through that assessment, which is as hard as it gets, then the efficiency and the effectiveness of how we use donors' money has been proven and approved by the Australian government.
So it's good enough for the Australian government. It should be good enough for the average person.
I mean, we have some really amazing foundations and individuals that ask really good, tough questions and want the evidence about the impact and the efficiency of our spend of their dollars, which I really like, because they're doing their due diligence into their philanthropy just as they would with their financial investment portfolio. But even their question, nothing has compared to the DFAT assessment that we went through. So you're right. If we can pass that, then people should feel comfortable.
Confident.
Yeah. And we have to do all sorts of ongoing compliance work for the Australian government to retain that. Because obviously it's not going to look great for the Australian government if one of their accredited organisations isn't working professionally and efficiently. So they keep an eye on us.
Okay, we'll get into a bit more about that later. But before you get that accreditation, you have to be accredited as a charity. So there is the ACNC.
ACNC.
It's a bit of a mouthful. So it's the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. So what do they do? Because you need to be registered or accredited by them to get that charitable organization status. And also the benefits of having that is obviously if someone donates to your charity, they get a tax deduction off that.
If they're registered with the ACNC. So there are a number of charities that work out there that don't have ACNC registration, but by applying to the ACNC and being registered and approved through them, then you get what's called deductible gift recipient status, DGR status. And it's different tests for overseas charities like ours, slightly more that we need to comply with and harder because our beneficiaries are overseas than the ones domestically. So once you have DGR status, then when someone gives a donation, then we can give them a tax deductible receipt so they can claim tax back on their donation.
Yeah. So I think, even our schools building fund is technically a tax deductible.
It will have DGR status.
Have, gotten DGR status and will be registered as, I guess, a not-for-profit because, the schools are obviously not a charity.
And I suppose what it is a nice way of, as a taxpayer in Australia, being able to have control over some of your tax dollars. So rather than paying tax and having the Australian government decide where that goes, through this DGR status and deductible receipt, you're then choosing how you want some of your taxpayer money, where you want it to go to. So when you choose a charity, you're going, actually, I'd like some of my tax to go to international development or education in Africa through So They Can, or, you know, providing more cancer care for a charity domestically.
Yeah, that's a very interesting...
So it kind of empowers you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of viewing it. It's choosing where your tax dollars go, because technically you should be paying that tax, but then now you're getting it back and you're giving it to someone else.
Exactly.
So it's taking that almost that power away from the government to a cause that you care about. Yeah, well,
it's just taking it's empowering your own decision making process in the philanthropic space. Yeah, which I think, and we really strongly encourage people to do that. America does it really well. They talk about it a lot better than I think we do in Australia and New Zealand, because it really is saying, if you are frustrated with the way your government is spending taxes, then donate more and have more control about where it goes, because you will have that tax deductibility if you donate to a charity that has DGR status. Yeah,
that's a very interesting sort of approach to looking at that. It's because like you're actually depriving the government of those tax dollars, but in a way you are just basically directing that tax dollars to a place that you want it to be.
You're just a bit more in control of your philanthropy. And we, of course, luckily for us, we can do that twofold. So through our full DFAT accreditation, so then we can direct it to international development, but through individual donations through the DGR status as well.
Okay.
So now, when you give when you give $100, it's more like 70 that you're actually giving, because you're saving that tax.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, for most doctors at the highest tax bracket, that's a lot better.
A lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you've mentioned about some of the correct questions that donors would ask about the charity. So how do you assess a charity? I mean, I think the most obvious one is like what problem they're trying to solve, or who are the beneficiaries of that? You know, is this local? Is this overseas? Is this children? Is it people living with disability, cancer? I mean, there's a whole range of that, and I think it's very visible, that component of the charity, because it's probably on the website, and that's, pictures, marketing and all that sort of stuff. But what are the other sort of things which are not plastered on the website that one should think about when they're donating to a charity?
Such a good question. Thank you for asking it. And it's an important question, because there isn't this, I wish there was a very prescriptive breakdown of donors' dollars. So, some charities will go 32% is administration and fundraising. Others will go, it's 10%. But they're not comparing apples with apples, because some people put fundraising costs in there, some don't. So I wish it was more prescriptive.
Okay. So if you were the commissioner and you wanted to make all of this available, what are the, say, top 5 things you would want to be published?
Well, I would make it clear. I would say, I would define what fundraising costs are. I would define what administration costs are. I would be very clear around staff in Australia that are overseeing projects and managing projects and implementation in country, whether that sits under fundraising or whether that's an administration or whether that sits under projects. Because people just skin that cat very differently, so it's very hard
you put that in different
for
bucket.
a donor to understand how much is actually going. We're very at So They Can, because it's a sort of probably the lawyer in me, it's something that's important to me. So we're very transparent about every dollar and where it goes and what it goes to. So your question about how do donors assess a charity, I think, well, first of all, I really encourage donors to do as much of an assessment as they would into their sort of financial portfolios. I get frustrated at how many people sort of say they'll hear about a charity in whatever country that has been found to be fraudulent, and then they're just going to stop giving. They're just going to stop their philanthropy because they say, charities. And it's just unfair to tar all of us with that brush.
Absolutely.
And I don't think a financial investor would do the same with their shareholding. So they might have, a a broad-reaching portfolio, and something might happen with one of their companies, but they're not going to withdraw all of their investments.
I'm not going to stop investing because this company went belly up.
They just do more due diligence. So I just strongly encourage people to do your due diligence about your charities that you want to give them. So first of all, decide what resonates with you, what's important to you, what your purposeful reach is, whether that is environment, poverty, children, education, animals. And then go and research the organisations that are out there. Ask the tough questions. Ask, not just what percentage is administration and fundraising, but get them to explain their staff, what the different job descriptions are, and what their purpose is. Luckily, it's becoming fairly old school to talk about, well, why don't you give 100% of my donor dollar overseas or to the charity, because people are recognising that a charity has to be run as efficiently and effectively as a good company. You're not going to pay quality staff nothing. They're not going to feed their own children. So,
and sometimes almost having the employment for the people in that charity is the charity.
A charity as well. And particularly for the employment of staff in Africa. All of our staff in Kenya and Tanzania, they're 100% locals. And
exactly. That's my point. It depends on what you're doing.
Because
if you're just giving out checks to people, that's a very different thing from employing people on the ground and doing projects on the ground and that sort of thing. There's ones where it just can be just capital expense. If you're digging wells, then that's just a capital expense. But if you're actually teaching kids, you need teachers. And
exactly. And we have a lot of social workers that work for the whole child rights. So there's a lot of that. There's a sort of charity within a charity in that respect. So I would just encourage people to do their due diligence. And luckily for us with this DFAT accreditation and the fact that we have to be, we're very compliant. We do lots of acquittals. So if you give a donation, ask when do we get the acquittal reports? Acquittal reports being the impact reports of how much we gave and itemising where it went to and how that was broken down, and the empirical plus the statistical impact of that dollar. Just kind of ask the questions that you'd ask if you're investing in Microsoft or whatever it is.
So now I've got
take responsibility.
Because you've mentioned that, it sounds like to me that it's almost like that report you get at the end of the year where the government says, this is how much taxes you paid, X percentage went to this, X percent went to that.
Exactly.
Obviously, that's in that financial year. But I would assume depending on when your donation came in, how you spent it over that period of time would be slightly different based on different projects, based on year to year. And from the way you run your charity, is that sort of pooled together as a fund, like, from a fund approach, or is this a pooled together because, we've been fundraising for this particular project, so that money went to that project, and then this is the outcome? Good
question.
Because I'm putting my sort of fund manager hat on and say, when we get funds from everyone, do we pull it together and do all the things, or do we just say, okay, this bit for that bit for this?
Well, we have to do all of that.
So, all of that. Oh, goodness.
So we do our audited annual report with the external auditors that comes out each year. That's our general annual report on impact. And, we spent $4.7 million last year. So exactly where all that went. So we do the annual report. And then for individual donors, there are some that give untied funds, which is, to be frank, very helpful for us because they do their due diligence on us as an organisation. They trust us as an organisation and then go, well, you're the qualified ones to know the best way to spend it. So they trust us to spend it. Yeah, we're the fund manager. That's right. So they will get they'll get 2 reports, so a 6-monthly acquittal report and a 12-monthly acquittal report plus the annual report on their donation because it's specific to the amount that they gave. And then we have others that are tied funding, which also obviously we're very grateful for. Potentially they're sponsoring a school or they're sponsoring the water project. Or they're sponsoring our teacher development or our teacher training college. So then we will be very specific about exactly acquitting on their dollars and breaking it down to where that went to. I will ask certain donors, some of the high net worth donors. I know them all, and I'll say, do you want me to call every few weeks, or if a child in your school breaks their arm, do you want to know? And some are going, yes, we want as much information as possible, which we'll provide. And others just go, no, trust you, just give us the annual report at the end of each year. The larger foundations and trusts that we get the big grants from, they have very clear acquittal reporting structures. From, the 2 reports, acquittal reports per year, to phone as well as sort of potential phone calls and just catching up. And then sometimes I step into foundation board meetings and we'll give them a sort of personal update on the impact of their dollar. We do the whole breadth of reporting.
And it sounds like there's almost a dollar for dollar tracking of where every dollar's come
we
in.
can do that. We have that information to be able to do that. Whether all donors get it is their preference.
I see.
So we can offer it and do it. A number of donors don't want it that often, and they will just be happy with the 6 monthly or 12 monthly reports, acquittal reports. And of course then the other, which I love, which is the empirical side of it, is we take people over there so they can see the impact of their dollar themselves. And that's the most powerful to me, having people, and I've just got back from Africa, I was just there last week, and I had a group of sort of 10 sort of directors and donors, and I love that point, which is generally halfway through day 2, when they stop saying, Cass, what you could do, to what we could do. And then I suddenly realise it's become their organisation.
Yeah, it's personal.
And that is the most helpful thing, that it becomes their charity.
That gets back to the day and we debate.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you're going to make me have to go away and tell them.
No, I get it. I get it because I suffered from the same problem. So I have personally been to Africa really South Africa, which is a relatively, well-off African nation. And I spent sort of 2 months during my medical elective.
Right.
So
were you in a hospital over there?
Yeah.
Cool.
So I had 2 different hospitals. So, the first one I was outside of in Johannesburg, outside of Soweto, in this place called Baragwanath Hospital. And the stuff I've seen there is very confronting for someone who's used to, first world medicine, right? So, it's one of those countries where they're trying to practice first world medicine with third world resources for some of those hospitals. And obviously there are hospitals where it's first world resources, even better than what we get in Australia. But there's that huge sort of gap and discrepancy. And the other hospital I was, it was like a provincial hospital in a slightly 1 hour out of Cape Town. So you still get to see a different side of the country.
Were they private hospitals or free hospitals?
No, it's all government hospitals. Yeah. So you see it really raw.
You're at the coal face,
Yeah, exactly. And I did that 15 years ago, and I still vividly remember
some of the stuff you would have seen.
I've seen and went through. And again, South Africa is a relatively wealthy African nation
compared to East Africa. Yeah.
So I mean, you've mentioned Africa, but we all know Africa is a continent. And so which countries in Africa do you predominantly operate in?
Yeah, so we work in Kenya and in Tanzania. Yeah. And we work in 2 communities in Kenya, one in Nakuru and the other in Baringo County. So they're the 2 counties. And then in Tanzania, we're in Babati.
Okay, I've never heard of those places.
Yeah. Have you heard of Arusha in Babati?
No.
Okay, Arusha's where a lot of the sort of the war trials have been held. So some people know Arusha. It's quite a cosmopolitan town, and we're just 2.5 hours south of there in Tanzania.
All right.
Yeah. But our Nakuru community, which is the first one, is what I call sort of urban poverty. So there's massive unemployment, but Nakuru is the fastest growing city in East Africa. And so it's just that, massive slums and no land and huge unemployment. And then our other 2 communities, Baringo in Kenya and Babati in Tanzania, they're what I'll call rural poverty, where lots of beautiful land and it's the red dirt and sunflowers grown in maize and beans, but if it rains too much or doesn't rain enough, then they die because they're subsistence living. It's that sort of semi-arid poverty, incredibly harsh. So it's interesting, the comparison between the two equally sort of challenging areas. But yeah, I can imagine what you would have seen, and I see similar. Yeah, there's certainly
huge burden with disease and healthcare burden there.
Yeah, and just a lot of the work we do is around that whole gender violence stuff as well that happens. Like, unfortunately, in our communities, girls, particularly in our Baringo community in Kenya, are seen as commercial property, of the men. So if you asked those communities to list the priorities, it would be the male, the man, and then it would be the cows, and then it would be the goats, and then it would be the sons, and then it would be the mother, the woman, and right below would be the girls. So understandably, in some ways, when you've got 7 children, because there's no contraception, and they're all starving, and they've got an opportunity to sell one of the girls off to a 60-year-old man when she's 12 years old, they, for a few goats, they take that to feed their kids for a while. So, that, and then there's a lot, because they're seen as property, the girls, there's a lot of sort of gender-based violence and the whole female genital cutting that goes on, and bride sales. So that's pretty confronting. In fact, when I was over there last week, there was an awful incident, and I ended up in this, what they call a clinic, but it's the most unhygienic kind of place, shack with, full of potential infection and diseases, and no materials or resources. Pretty scary. So we do work in that space.
Yeah, and I think, that's a reminder of how these places still exist.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to just indulge in our, very nice Australian lifestyles, and
but understandably, if you're not, it's so funny how many people I'll talk to and they'll go, really, that happens still in this day and age? And I'm like, yeah, but if you're not exposed to it, I understand how people aren't cognizant of it or thinking of it or doing anything about it. But yeah, there are more, the UN statistic came out recently that there are more slaves in our world today than any time in human history. Blows me away.
A lot more people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but also the whole child marriage space. So, and a lot of that comes from Africa, the whole continent.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's people just don't realize that. And they don't realize, for a cup of coffee, you can pretty much stop a girl getting sold and put her in boarding school for the year, and totally change the future of her and all her future generations through giving her an education. Yeah.
So now let's go back to the beginning. So tell us what happened after you've got this, $30,000. You had this $30,000 in your pocket. How did it go from there to being where you are now?
Yeah, good question.
I think a lot of our listeners will be interested in that sort of journey as well, and because there are quite a number of doctors, thinking about, okay, how do I give back to, either the local community or to the world, and some even talk about forming, bursaries and all that sort of thing. So I think it'll be really nice to talk about that journey and how it's set up and run initially. So it brings back memories.
Even asking that, it does. It brings back memories of the sun going down in this IDP camp and me talking with this committee in this tin shed. And I said to them, okay, well, I'll go and try and speak to the local government representative in this area and discuss with them how I want to partner with them and with, as in the government, and with the community, the IDP, the refugee community, to build this school. Yeah. So, the next day I went and sat on a very cold government corridor floor for about 7 hours before someone would see me, and then finally got into this office and convinced this sort of district education officer that no, I was genuinely there to help build a school in partnership with them, public-private partnership, being the government so they can, and the community. I can remember him asking me, really, are you really going to take our land and build a school, or are you going to just build your own house and put a swimming pool on. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
It's like, it's not that attractive to live here.
No, I'm actually, I don't need to stay here. Exactly.
I've got
but
my
it just
own.
shows how people
The
make
mindset.
promises that aren't kept. So that kind of broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
And then so drew up a bit of a contract. The lawyer and me threw out this memorandum of understanding and a bit of a contract, and which stipulated that we would raise the funds to put the capital down on the ground. They'd donate the land to the school, would be the title would be in the school's name.
Yes.
We'd raise the funds to construct the classrooms, etc., and then they would register the school and fund the teachers on an ongoing basis into that school. So then I came back. I was living in Australia. Spoke to my great friend and neighbour, Kerry Chittenden, who I convinced to come on board, and she's an amazing event manager, so she did amazing events where we raised lots of money, well, enough money at the time, and so she became co-founder with me. And then we just started taking people over. We hired a contractor from the IDP camp, a builder, Joseph, from the IDP camp, and worked very closely with the community, just travelled to and fro, had a guy I knew who went over and lived there for the next sort of year or so, and we would have expats on the ground but always paired up with a local on the ground, because it was always a goal from the start to ensure that it was 100% local staff on the ground. So they would shadow each other. So our expats would teach the locals in the same role, that when you say you're going to reply the next day, send the email and reply the next day. And then the locals would teach our expats, when you go to a government meeting or a community meeting, you do have to wait until everyone's families have been introduced for the hour and a half before you get down to the business end of things. So they were just teaching each other things, and then after about 3 years we were able to fully hand over to the locals on the ground. So
the
now
cultural things,
now something we're really proud of is 100% of our staff are local, and they've been amazing. So then we built this first school, Aberdeen Ranges Primary School.
Can I ask how big was this primary school, and how much did it cost?
Yeah, so it cost us around, back then it was about $16,000 for a classroom, Australian dollars for a classroom, 1.6. And I can remember asking the Australian government way back then how much it would cost to build and fit out a government classroom in Australia. It was like about $500,000.
Yeah.
So the economies of scale are another reason to invest overseas.
Yeah.
I think people should do both, domestic and internationally, just by the by. But so we would, in those beginning days, we would build 3 classrooms and bring in 3 streams of what's called ECD, early childhood development, so preschoolers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
so early on.
Yeah. So we started from little 4-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds, and then we'd build those classrooms, bring those little kids in, and then raise money the next year for another 3 classrooms. So we just bumped them all up until we got to the full primary school, which has the 8 streams, preschool all the way up to actually 9 streams, year 8. And so now, and then we have a very clear 3-phase sustainable development model at So They Can, which means we're with a community for around 8 years. They know that from the start.
Yep.
We have a MOU, memorandum of understanding, that stipulates that.
Yep.
They know that we will exit come year 7 or 8, so that we can hand over. But they also know that we will have worked with them so that they're in a position where we can exit and it's sustained. So in year 1, which is our foundation year, just 1 year, we just determine, do they have enough skin in the game, basically? Are they turning up to parent-teacher meetings? Are they bringing the mud bricks and providing some labour to do some construction? Do they have a school management committee? They all pass that with flying colours, because they know education is the gold ticket. Then we move them into our 6-year, what we call our core stage, where we throw all our 8 education projects at them. And we wrap around that our community development program. So our healthcare project, community health project, our Wazisha, which is our microfinance project for women, women's empowerment project, and our child, youth and development project as well, so we can support some of the orphaned and vulnerable children around our school communities. And then after that 6 years, we moved them into our sustained phase for 2 years, which is when we're slowly exiting from a financial point of view, because because in that 6 years of core stage, we have, with the 8 projects we have upskilled the teachers with our teacher development project. We have empowered our school community, the parents, to know how to keep the head teacher accountable, how to apply to the national government for their capitation grants, the $13 per head per student per year, which isn't much.
So basically the funding.
But make sure that they're accessing that and getting that. We've done all the construction with the community. We've built all the classrooms, the toilets, the changing room for the girls to alleviate period poverty. We put water in, which is critical. We've done farms. So every school, we create a income generating farm so that they can feed the children. The school feeding program is critical.
So you have a self-sustaining farm that feeds the kids.
And hopefully also brings in extra income for maintenance of the school once we exit. And that feeding program is critical because parents often will send their children to school and register them for food. You know, some of our kids probably walk 12 kilometres one way to school, and the only thing that's making their parents send them there rather than using them to look after the goats at home is because it's one less mouth to feed, because they know they get fed at school. So they won't have any other meals generally apart from the school meal.
Wow.
So that's, and also then if you don't have a feeding program, because the kids are doing this, they pass out and they can't learn because they're starving. So it's critical for retention of the school kids, attendance of the school kids, and also learning. So that school farm is really important. So we would have done all that in that 6 years. So then we can confidently go, okay, you guys are good. We can hand over. You've got the income coming in. You've got the food coming in through the farm. You've got well-qualified teachers now. You've got, you understand children's rights internationally and locally through our My Voice project and our sort of, gender children's rights projects. And then we'll just slowly withdraw our funding. We'll stay on the school board of management. One of our members of the team will be on the school board just to ensure the continued effectiveness, and then we can just move that funding to more needy areas. And it's really lovely because we tell the school community, you know that you've now become the donor because we've empowered you, we've handed over, and now you're releasing the funding we're providing to you to go to a much more needy area now because we know that they empowered you.
That's a very sustainable approach.
And sustainability is a real buzzword in a lot of places, but in the development space, and it's really challenging and hard to do. But, I do believe we found the solution to it through this model.
Well, that's beautiful, actually.
And it's really lovely. And I'm, as I say, because I was just there last week, you see it in action. And it's so good as well because the communities, they don't want to be donor reliant forever. They want to stand on their own 2 feet. So it's very empowering for them as well. And they're capable and able. Kids are so bright and so determined and resilient. They're such entrepreneurs. There's this statistic, I don't know if you've heard that the UN has announced that by 2050, so the next 25 years, a third of the world's population is going to come from the African continent. So we need to be educating them.
On top of everything.
They've got everything. They've got the resilience and the determination and the entrepreneurship because they don't have a social welfare umbrella. So it's all they've got. They've got to make the most of any opportunity they're given. So they do. All that's missing is quality education, which is where we come in, because unfortunately, because the governments have no resourcing or don't give the resourcing to the schools and the education system, the quality of education and most of our communities, when we start with them, they're all learning under a tree. They don't have a classroom, they don't have water, they don't have textbooks, they don't have any of that.
It all begins with the basic necessities and education for any country.
So if you inject education into that generation, next generation, who are going to make up a third of the world's population, who are going to be international corporates, clients and human resourcing and entrepreneurs for the world, then it's really exciting, I reckon. You've got some remarkable people coming out of that continent.
Well, that sounds amazing, and I'm sure some of our doctors would like to know more. So I'm gonna sort of put the link below and have a look.
Yeah.
So I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much for coming in and sort of sharing your journey.
Thank you.
We have another episode in store with you. So
great.
We'll see you then.
Very much. Thank you very much.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The information and opinions shared are not intended as personal financial advice. The content presented should not be relied upon for making financial, investment, or other decisions. Listeners are strongly encouraged to seek the advice of qualified financial or legal professionals before making any financial decisions. While we aim to provide valuable and accurate information, we make no guarantees regarding the completeness or accuracy of the content. Any reliance on the information provided is done at your own risk.